So why don't we get started? Hopefully Mary can still get her tea. Welcome everyone to the OpenChain AI working group for December. We've got two items on the agenda today, but before we get to that, the antitrust policy notice, which is put up at the start of every single Linux Foundation meeting. You can find details of the antitrust policy notice on the website enclosed on this slide. And if you're a member or your company is a member of the Linux Foundation, you can contact Andy Updegrove for further information. This antitrust policy kind of allows us to have sort of free discussions amongst members and participants. Okay, so with that out of the way, I have two agenda items today following up from the last meeting that this group had. The first was homework for everybody to go and read the AI guide. I've just put that in the chat, and I've realized that that is not a link, so I'll put that in the chat in a moment when I get to it. And we were planning on just going through the guide, seeing if people had any feedback or comments. And then next month, the January meeting, we're going to make this more of a webinar to go through that guide, the history of it, where it's come from, and kind of walk through how we got to where we got as a bit more of a publicity of the guide. The second item on the agenda was something that was discussed last time, which I'd like to further discuss, is whenever my company goes and asks another company for information on their AI offerings, their AI service, their AI tool, I ask them a load of questions from my company. Other people will probably ask them slightly different questions, probably very similar questions. And the idea was, could we come up with a more unified questionnaire for procurement purposes? And I'd like to carry on that discussion if we think that's worthwhile. And if it is, we have a bit of a time in this working session, we could maybe spitball some ideas. I've already jotted a few things down. Does anyone else have anything they want to bring up today? Hearing none, let me put this link in the chat and see if this works. That looks like a better link. Can someone just click on it and make sure they can access the guide? And just let me know that they can access it.
Yeah, you get
Thanks,
thumbs
Dave.
up. Mm-hmm.
Appreciate it. So, like I said, at the end of last time, we said we would go and read this guide and come back with comments. We sort of created this guide earlier this year. The world of AI has gone lightning speed, and it's a good opportunity to have a check-in to see whether we think this is still relevant, and we can work towards either a version 1.1 or a version 2 as we see fit. Rather than me just talking, have others reviewed the guide? Do they have any thoughts, comments before I sort of walk through it again?
Sounds good.
Sounds good. So when I was going through this in preparation for the meeting, I thought I'd just stop and highlight definition of artificial intelligence version 2.1, a computer system capable of performing tasks that would previously require human intelligence. What are people's thoughts on that? Does that kind of define what AI means? I mean, there are other official definitions of AI out there, but I'd like to get people's thoughts on it.
Hey, um, Matthew, could you refresh us on the origin of that definition? where it came
No,
from?
I can't recall. Um, I'm thinking because it wasn't in 5230, we'll have added it. Um, I don't recall writing that down. Um, so no, I can't recall it. I know Shane did a lot of work. I know Karen did a lot of work on this. So it may have come from one of them, but I can't say for certain where it's come from. I mean, those words together don't seem like a formal official definition elsewhere. And I guess the point of me raising it was, do we want to align with an official definition that's defined elsewhere, or are we comfortable with our own definition?
Yeah, yeah. If we eventually want to go the direction of ISO, we should try to look at what ISO's previously said in this area, what other specifications. But um, you know, I, I think the question that needs to be unlocked is, kind of where it came from in the history of the document. Do we maybe we can take a look to see whether we see an editor, and we can follow up there if that makes
Do you
sense.
want me to do that now?
Yeah, can you see that? Yeah.
Um, I mean, I was just on the PDF document.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see if we can go to the Word document. Here it is. Can you guide me, Dave? Where am I looking for history, version history?
Um, I haven't. Oh, actually, so this is just a word, right?
Yeah.
Um, uh, do you see on your menu screen up top? Uh, track changes.
Do I see it? Do you see it?
Yeah.
I don't see it.
No, no, I don't see it. It looks like you're just webbing your
Yeah.
it's just a browser interface. But my browser interface, I do see a menu strip along the top,
Ah, okay.
um, and I don't see it here.
Are you able to share your screen to have a look at it?
Let's take it offline.
Okay.
Let's just take it as an action for us to try to chase down the origin of that edit, because to your point, it seems unusual to me as well. It doesn't seem wrong. In fact, I think it's very thought provoking. I just, um, I need to somehow have the conversation together around whether the unnormalized articulation of it um, is worth the squeeze versus using a more standard definition.
Just stop sharing so I can sign in and with my personal or my credentials to see if I can edit this or put comments. But Mary, I saw you came off mute. Was there anything you wanted to add there?
Yeah, I can wait though.
No, please
It
go
was
ahead.
the
Please,
it
please
was
talk
the
whilst I'm doing this in the background.
oh, okay. Well, I think we might need to display, or if everyone can go to the
No,
introduction. I had a
I've got it.
suggestion.
I'm
Um,
sharing again.
oh, thank you. And I never noticed this before, uh, all through the public comment period and well, before release. But it just struck me now with fresh eyes. There's a sentence in there that says, this guide is under development and will likely see substantial changes and or expansion before finalization. So now it's finalized as version
We should probably
1.0.
remove that. Where
I'm wondering if, yeah, do we,
is it in this page here?
Yeah,
the first paragraph,
yeah,
There
there.
it
last
is.
sentence, yeah.
Okay. I'm gonna
I don't think, I think it served a good purpose, but it doesn't need to be there now.
there we go. I'll create a new copy of this so I'm not deleting that old version, but thank you, Mary.
Sure.
And then the definition. So now that I have this, Dave, is this what you have? I'm trying to see if there's anything about history.
Mhm. Yeah, let's come back on that one.
Okay. Oh, there it was, version history. Okay.
I do have a question on is that the right term to even being defined as artificial intelligence? Should it instead be AI system, which is used in the SBOM definition, or should it be AI model? I'm kind of curious what the value of defining artificial intelligence. It's a pretty high level term.
You make a great point, and we obviously started as an AI guide, and then it became an AI system guide, an AI system bill of material guide. So, well, sorry, yeah. Maybe we need to define, well, yeah, it's not AI system, is it? It's, you're right, AI, well, is it system, is it model? Maybe that's the key thing, and therefore the purpose of defining AI is actually not relevant.
Yeah, maybe it should be AI system.
I'm going to delete that abbreviation. I guess I could do that now. Okay. Well, actually, the term a computer system capable of performing tasks that were previously done by a human, it's not quite right. Anyone want to have a stab at defining AI system?
Well, I think that's the research we need to do around the Git history.
I think I was more comfortable with the rest of the definitions, but AI was one that I wanted to pick out. Anyone else just skimming down this page have any concerns with any of the others?
The caps versus no caps in the definitions. Was there
Oh yeah,
a conversation around, not having caps?
I don't recall one.
Yeah.
What do we
be
think?
consistent.
Again, let's be consistent. I mean, you can see we've capitalized every sort of noun. Should we do that here? Capital compliance, capital artifacts, or
I think I remember in the SPDX world, there was a reason why they didn't do capitals like you would normally do in a contract. And I can't remember what the reason is. It might have something to do with ISO rules or something. Does that sound familiar? Because it bothered me too, and they said, no, we have to have lowercase.
Mm.
But I'll find out what the reason is and I'll get back.
Yeah, thanks, Mary. I don't recall that conversation, but because I think to everyone's eyes it's a little jarring. It
Yeah.
probably is a reason. Yeah. I think you're missing an E on rationale.
yes.
Okay. All right. Unless it's
And
like a British
I
thing.
don't know if it's the British thing, but I'll put a Z in for you guys as well. I was on the fence when I was writing it. I thought, does it have an E in American English? But anyway, okay,
I'm just not gonna be able to read it if you don't put that Z in there.
moving on very quickly before we go down a rabbit hole there. Okay, ISO and IC maintain terminology. Okay, I think that seems reasonable. So one thing I recall when going through this guide previously, I mean, I wanted to focus on transparency. I felt as though we'd kind of evolved that over the time. And there were other areas. I don't know. I'll pause. Other people. I mean, we can just go through that. I think that was a great couple of comments earlier. We could go through some of these things. I think I felt as though there were some sections missing. Um, I don't know. We can capture that as we go through. I don't know if people are reading this and digesting.
Is there anything in particular that you wanted to call attention to?
Was transparency. It's coming back to me. Maybe I can't pinpoint it now, but I felt as though when we were finishing up this guide, there were still some gaps in a process, thinking about how I might implement this. And maybe I need to pick up on those as we go down.
Okay.
There was more things about models in there, data sets, data cards, model cards, that I felt as though we could build on. Because they were just kind of the processes for assessing them or having people do them. Is there a desire to add more to that?
That space seems so unstandardized right now. I don't know if it's worthwhile getting into more specifics. Brian, have you and Jeff, have you guys seen any normative practices start to solidify?
No, not at all. It seems to be a moving target still, and I think people are proceeding cautiously and trying to sort of put their finger in the wind and see which way the industry's moving, what expectations are.
Yeah, same with data sets.
Thanks. Yeah, it's just, I would say let's just keep it high level for now. I think it's unrealistic for us to expect that this particular guide is going to set practices, create norms. I think we're trying to do is we're trying to distill them into a form so that within a range of normative practices, these are considered to be acceptable towards reducing friction in the supply chain.
So we have policy here, 3.1, written policy shall exist that governs AI system bill of materials compliance. Is there a lot of weight on that word compliance? I know that's defined further up. Yes, so the policy shall be internally communicated and informed by business strategy, legal requirement, and relevant jurisdictions, and the level of risk appropriate for the use case. Again, we're not defining here what that policy is. Any comments on policy?
None for me.
Competence. The organization shall identify roles and corresponding responsibilities of those roles that affect performance and effectiveness of the program. Determine the necessary competence of program participants fulfilling each role. Program participants must have requisite skills, knowledge, experience, and engagement with the functions below, if relevant to the use case: governance, security, safety, privacy, development, supply management. I don't see any sort of legal roles in here. Compliance roles, is that different to governance? And also, I don't know if it's under the word development, but sort of the technical people who are working on the models, surely they're going to be important in the effectiveness of the program. So are there any other things in this bullet point list that we feel as though we're missing?
Why did we leave legal out? Since it's a compliance themed guide. Because we have it in OpenChain, right? Legal roles.
Mm-hmm.
And we kind of
Yeah.
copied it over from the OpenChain. So it's almost like it was left out on purpose.
Mm-hmm. I don't recall the reason why. Privacy obviously is the biggest legal area, but there is also license compliance. There's cross-border transfers, on the data set side, as another hot area. But yeah, no objection to putting legal in.
Do you want me to spell it out a little bit more with compliance, export control? Or just leave it as
Mm-hmm.
legal?
Yeah. Yeah. So where your cursor's at with governance, you can argue that governance has implications, but I think I would keep governance. Governance, to me, governance isn't just legal. Governance is a superset of legal. Yeah, I would just leave it like that.
And development, I don't think we defined. No. But I inferred development is the technical people. So what other people are inferring from that?
To me, that's like development in the context of research and development.
Research and development.
But it's the technical aspect of actually building the system. I don't think it's ambiguous to me. But
Okay.
if you ask the question, and maybe from your perspective, if we need to change it.
So 3.3, the organization shall ensure that the program participants are aware of the AI SBOM policy, relevant business objective, their contributions to the effectiveness of the program, implications of not following the program's requirements. I don't like the lack of capitalization again here. Any comments on awareness of the people that need to be aware? I think we have training, don't we? That's where. No, we don't have anything about training. Should people be trained in the implications of not following program requirements? Trained in.
Yeah. Would you? I mean, one can argue that training is a method of awareness. There's other ways to provide that through other internal communications, for example.
Yeah. I'm just trying to think of the analogy of 5230. We created that training guide because we're saying people needed to be trained. And I think that definition was defined over the different versions of the spec.
Mm-hmm.
And then we obviously created training generally that included, license information, patent information, defining what they are, the terms. Okay, let's leave it at that. Program scope. Different programs may be governed by different levels of scope. For example, a program could govern a single product line or an entire department or an entire organization. The scope designation needs to be declared for each program. Written statement that clearly defines the scope and limits of the program. To provide the flexibility to construct a program that best fits the scope of an organization's needs. Some organizations could choose to maintain a program for a specific product line, while others could implement a program to govern the supplied software of the entire organization. Seems quite reasonable. License obligations. A process shall exist for reviewing the relevant identified license for an AI system's code weight datasets, but not limited to training, testing, and verification datasets, as well as a license for the AI system itself to determine obligations, restrictions, and rights granted by each license, taking into account the intended use of the AI system. Not that it's often the case that an AI system is trained on multiple other AI systems that may be identified in the AI system model tree. For example, each of these may have their own licenses. Do we define model tree? No. Does anyone recall putting model tree in here?
I'm not actually sure what a model tree is.
Well, that's good because
know?
I'm in the same boat and it's not defined.
Okay.
I'm assuming multiple models. Go on.
Model tree. Okay. I mean, I know what a software tree is, but I don't know if that directly correlates. Also, I'm wondering, is anybody doing this? Are you really checking all of the licenses for all the data that a model was trained on when you get it from a third party? I mean, maybe you don't want to say whether you do or not, but I think it'd be pretty difficult.
Yeah, Mary, I think that goes to the whole notion here of us trying to be flexible because different scenarios necessitate different levels of research or risk mitigation,
Hmm.
depending on the use case and the supplier.
So it's not a requirement, it's just listing all the various license obligations that you might include.
A process shall exist for reviewing the relevant identified license for an AI system's code weights and data sets. So I can imagine in a hypothetical situation, a model on Hugging Face that has 20 data sets in there with the licenses associated with them. Those could be reviewed. But then in an AI system where we've got a large language model that is a commercial large language model, do we review all licenses for things going in there? I think that's probably your question you're getting to, Mary.
Yeah, I think it's impossible because we aren't given that information in some cases. So it does read like a requirement to me, and I'm not sure that it's really required in the real world. So I wonder if we should maybe soften it.
How would you want to soften it, Harry?
Well, right now it reads like you need to know the licenses for the code, weights, and data sets. But when you go on Hugging Face and look at a model, they might tell you what in the paper what sort of data they used, but sometimes you don't have access to it, right? Or it might be, mysterious.
I
So
recall
you
this
can't
being.
go
Oh,
ahead.
sorry, Mary. I
You go.
recall this being, and we may try to soften it, I think, with the word identified. I think we tried to soften it in two regards. One, both in data sets and models, we don't have that information. And two, by participant, they may want to choose the degree to which they comply with certain levels of the diligence and the pedigree. Um, but this was a conversation we had before, and I think that word identified played a part in it, right? Like you just won't have information on pedigree. And so maybe it's
Uh-huh.
like, okay, you're on notice about these, you have a process to review it. We're not dictating what your process is, but at least there's a process for you to decide what it consists of based on what you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like that. Okay.
But apparently we didn't do a good enough job saying
Yeah,
that.
identified, that makes sense. So if you can't identify it, it's not included in the scope of this thing.
What if we say reviewing the relevant licenses, comma, where reasonably identified?
That makes sense to me. I don't know if it's too relaxed now, but we do want to make sure our guide is practical, right? And so people
Yeah,
read it and they go, oh, half the time I don't know what the licenses for the data was, and now I can't follow this guide. Maybe we could think about it some more.
yeah. Since we are editing a final version, right? So we should make sure that we're tracking these proposed edits as proposals, and we can perhaps think about it for next time.
Are you basing this softening on sort of court cases that have played out over the year, or inferences of how the industry is progressing? I'm thinking, did we start off quite strong with strong wording based on where we were 12 months ago, where certain court cases hadn't progressed, and therefore we thought this would be a major concern, and now it might be less so?
That
That
is a
was the
good
question.
point. That's not what I was thinking, but I wish I had thought that deeply about it. That's a good point that you have. And I wasn't around a year ago when you wrote this part, so I'm not sure. But yeah,
But
I'm just thinking about
given and we've obviously added the word relevant in there as well to further soften it. Would you agree the direction of travel, and maybe this isn't directly at you, Mary, but just generally, that there is softening of the ability to use data in these models under fair use, and we're getting more evidence that that is acceptable. And therefore, the need to identify these licenses is becoming less important.
I feel like that certainly was part of it, is us not kind of creating a rule that may be mute at some point because of a ruling, and that's certainly a direction that we see now, but at least trying to create some sort of language that allows for operating around these constantly evolving litigation outcomes.
Okay. Model tree. Where do we think we got to on model tree? Anyone recall?
Well, I find it odd that it's a capitalized term, but we didn't define it. But all that I can think is that we were referring to like a model family, because I'm not familiar with model tree.
I'm glad it's not just me.
Mary, what's your different definition of a software tree?
Oh, I was just thinking in a repo, it can look like a tree. You've got branches and you can, click down to the individual files, the leaves.
So that's my inference as well, that I've taken, or somebody's written the word model tree in there based on software tree.
Like I would think a model tree is referring to a parent model and then a bunch of subsets of it with different numbers of parameters, maybe different fine tunings. One is a conversational model versus another model. I've just not seen this term before.
There you go. OpenChain have defined something that's going to propagate through the industry. You heard it here first. I do feel as though this paragraph or this from here, this note that I'm going to be bold and put it in a separate paragraph. I don't know how. Yeah,
You can delete it. The way it's worded, it's like, it's so, oh, everybody knows this, right? No, it's often the case that da-da-da, and I'm like, is it? Is it often the case? I wonder if it's even necessary.
okay. Transparency obligations. The process shall exist for reviewing if there are any transparency obligations from regulations, including but not limiting to training, testing, and verification data sets, taking into account the intended use of the model. If the use case for the training data creates a relevant issue, e.g. disclosure obligations to downstream recipients, in the context of transparency, then appropriate risk mitigation measures should be undertaken.
Why do we call it risk mitigation measures? Creates a relevant issue.
Yeah, it
I
almost
mean,
seems like it just be like steps, appropriate steps or appropriate.
for compliance, yeah,
Yeah.
you just comply. Make it sound harder than it is, I think. This is a really interesting exercise because obviously I read this thing a lot, at first, but now after a year of practice, it looks different. It's interesting.
And I'm wondering whether you, Mary, I'm looking at this, like actually going through this in my day job. What am I actually doing? And
Hmm.
is this the reality um, of it? And as we've said, things have evolved over the last 12 months. And are we actually following what the industry needs or wants, or in a pragmatic situation? Okay. Maintain a process to effectively respond to external AI SBOM compliance inquiries. Publicly identify a means by which a third party can make an AI SBOM compliance inquiry. Those sentences seem very similar. Is the second sentence actually needed?
Well, maintain a process
Yeah,
to respond, and then the second sentence is, and oh, by the way, make sure that you publicize it so people can use the method.
but is that not part of the verification materials?
Yes, publicly viable.
Maybe I'm reading too much into this.
I don't, yeah, it doesn't bother me. I see what
Okay,
you mean. Just look a little bit redundant with the materials, but
let's not fret over this.
I think those are two different steps, and I think it mirrors what we have in OpenChain.
Yes, in the 5230.
Mhm.
Okay. Effectively resourced. I think this is again lift and shift. So identify and resource program tasks, assign accountability to ensure the successful execution of program tasks. Program tasks are sufficiently resourced, time to perform the tasks has been allocated, and adequate funding is allocated. A process exists for reviewing and updating the policy and supporting tasks. What do we mean by policy here?
Well, we have there's a requirement to have a policy, right? That's what early
Yes,
on. And that's separate from the process, which is the tasks. So I guess we're trying to say, make sure you have a process to review both of those things. But we could call it the AI or whatever we called it up there,
yeah,
we could call it that here.
that makes me feel better,
Yeah.
if that's okay. Oh, again, I should. Okay, and then the actual AI system bill of materials. A process shall exist for creating and managing an AI SBOM. This can be in any format. The AI SBOM shall account for inbound materials from third parties. So there was one thing that, again, when I was reviewing this, for AI system bill of materials that a company is creating, this isn't necessarily any reflection of my company, but is there the concept of like an internal AIS bomb that is just practical things internally and then things that would be helpful for partners um, that we can give out? And of course, some of that might be a requirement of a whole host of frameworks. I did want to pick up on that thought. Did I explain it sufficiently?
Yeah, I think what you're alluding to, Matthew, is there could be an instance where there's an internal model card or an internal data card that might contain some levels of discretion or even legal interpretation, in contrast to an SBOM that's prepared for external sharing.
Yeah. And of course, that internal one may be more of a draft that could evolve to an external one, or as you point out, it may have fields in there that are only relevant to a specific company, or a company, and again, talking purely hypothetically, may disclose certain things, may be less transparent if they want to be for whatever reason. So yeah, having those two interpretations of an internal and an external AIS bomb. Does that make any sense? It's more like a draft one in development versus the one that's distributed.
This section, though, in 3.9, it does say that it'll account for inbound materials from third parties. So when you're talking about your internal model card, are you talking about models that you are developing in-house?
Yeah, because of course this guide is supposed to cover both, yeah?
So that when you distribute your thing, you're providing the appropriate info.
Indeed, yeah.
I see.
And maybe it's just an add-on to that second sentence. AI
We could make a
SBOM.
note here to further discuss including first-party models.
And in another example, you take an open source model of Hugging Face and you work on it, but you had no intention of redistributing it. You may again want to capture things in an AI SBOM for your own internal use. What have you done with it? And so on. I don't know whether I'm overthinking this and whether this guide is actually agnostic on what the AI SBOM, who it's for,
Yeah,
what it's relevant for.
I do think you're onto something here. Just the way that I see this is the SBOM is intended for external release to third parties. I think if there's a different artifact that's internal, I wouldn't personally call that an AI bomb. I'd call that something else.
Like technical documentation, and therefore it's out of scope of what we're trying to achieve here.
Potentially, yeah. I think that this document should be focused on artifacts that you do intend or are comfortable sharing.
To the point of the whole point of OpenChain is to build trust in the supply chain. And so
Right.
therefore we need to be focusing on things that we're distributing externally.
Right. I think there's a whole host of other considerations and documentation that go beyond this document that companies would be interested in doing for their own purposes.
Okay. So therefore, I don't know, what do we think, given the drive for OpenChain to be mainly about those external documents, we actually remove this concept, this note that I've taken?
I guess if we want to make it similar to OpenChain, because OpenChain doesn't contemplate first-party open source, right? I mean, I guess you could put it on your SBOM if you wanted, but it's mostly about ingesting and passing along third-party components. So if we want to keep it similar, we could continue to exclude first-party models.
Done. Okay. And then 10, an organization shall have a governance framework for AI, policies and practices to help ensure that AI systems are developed, deployed and managed responsibly. Governance emphasizes compliance with emerging AI laws and regulations such as the EU AI Act, Hiroshima AI Process Global AI Governance Initiative, and addresses ethical considerations, risk management, and transparency. For example, understand the risks associated with ongoing use of AI systems and training data in the context of their intended program. This should include the ability to monitor the life cycle of the AI system and perform ongoing analysis of its intended uses. I mean, we've listed 3 governance frameworks there, regulatory and governance frameworks. I can't remember. I mean, I remember somebody wanting to add the Japan one. I'm wondering how out of date this will quickly become when the next new piece of legislation comes out from a certain country that we all start following.
Yeah, we could genericize it, right? We don't have to have such as people are more aware of that stuff. They have to be, right?
Mm. Okay, well, there you go. It seemed not too much of a change. I think I propose I'll create a version 1.1 with the minor updates, and we consider that. What do we think about promoting this this guide so others start using it?
How do we get people to start using it? I mean, we start presenting it at conferences, or what worked for OpenChain in the beginning?
Dave, do you recall?
Yeah, it was it was mostly presentations at conferences. And then we would have let's say different work groups come up with use cases about how they went about and adopted it, and what some of the best practices in the implementation phase of it might be. And so for about 18 months, we just had different companies volunteer to kind of just give talks at events. And a lot of it was focused on kind of a quick recap of what the spec was and how they went about and implement it internally. At least that's what I recall.
So I
The
mean,
work, obviously.
myself, Jimmy, Dave, we've spoken about this in California earlier this year. You've definitely highlighted it, Dave. Or is it Japan? No, Denver, seem to recall. But from what you're saying, Dave, is we just need to keep doing that. So like compliance summit in next week and so on. We just got to keep mentioning this to as many people as possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then the regional work teams really kind of took the ball and started running with it. In particular, Japan and then Korea soon after that. Europe as well, mostly led by, I think, the German companies. But what you had is you had a pretty robust conversation going around how people manage to get executive buy-in, and then awareness, and then executive buy-in, and then work teams organized to start changing procedures, engineering procedures on the open source side.
And how did we get from, I guess, where we are now with this AI guide to that stage? I feel as though that's where we'll be once, the gears have started working and, snowballs started falling down the hill, but we're right at the top of the hill. How do we start pushing that? What was that bit just before that stage?
I think a lot of it was it wasn't a lot of effort in order to get people to want to be interested in it. We had already collected, I call it, the right people that were moving out of enlightened self-interest because they knew that the OpenChain 5230 was going to improve their ability to perform their roles. In this case, we're in a slightly different position. I don't know exactly, what it is, but there's maybe the overlap between open source license compliance and AI/data set license compliance. There is certainly an overlap because of the commonality of a lot of the base licenses being related to open source. But of course, just like the software world in general, there's a lot of proprietary licenses as well. But the entry point for a lot of open source teams to get into AI and data sets is that commonality. But it's not, I see it as not universal. There's, I would say, more often than not, open source people not be sort of invited to make that transition within their own companies. So, I think we need to make sure that, we consider potentially even a remix in the sense that, the outreach to those, call it AI compliance counterparts, that needs to be a more deliberate activity for us to be able to, connect with the people that would naturally see the value of a normative practice being adopted. The regional team idea, I think, is also worthwhile because when you have regional practices, there's two things that happen. One is you get people potentially given the opportunity to physically meet and share ideas, and that's both rewarding and educational, and socially fun, I think. But then you also, create little pockets of ecosystems where the acceleration effect of everybody doing the same thing delivers on the efficiency promise. So I would suggest maybe a little bit more outreach to find those counterparts, because we have some here because of the connection with open source, but I don't think it's I think there's a gap that needs to be addressed.
Mary, what's your role as the ambassador here? Is this something you might be able to facilitate?
Well, I'm pretty new to this, so this is only my second meeting as an ambassador, so I'm not sure. I asked Shane for a description of the, what the expectations, and it was pretty loose still. I have some t-shirts I can give out at conferences, lanyards.
Yeah, more t-shirts.
Open
We gotta
to
get you more
suggestion. Everyone
But
loves
I didn't
swag.
know whether part of the role of the ambassador was to promote the work that the working group is doing, and not necessarily
Yeah.
knowing the history and the technical background, because you say you've only been to a couple of sessions, but to promote that. So I don't know,
Yeah,
going to the
that's why I was
Korea.
asking.
Okay,
That's why I was asking Dave, hey, do you have any ideas? Is it just presentations or more? Maybe we can ride the coattails of OpenChain. We had an OpenChain mini summit in Denver. So it's people who are already, familiar with OpenChain for the most part.
we need to
We
do a
can,
round the world tour, Mary, me, you, and
yeah.
Dave, and others, just promoting this.
So we could remind OpenChain, fans that this exists.
I do think it'd
That'd be
be
good.
odd to have adoption of this by someone who is not already familiar or adopting OpenChain. So I think
Yeah,
that's a great place to start.
right. Makes sense.
And so the January session of this meeting, we were going to do a webinar for the whole of OpenChain. So that may start again the ball rolling. Marcel, I see you've got your hand up.
Yes, just for your heads up, as we also plan the OpenChain and Friends here in Stuttgart in March, we also plan to have an AI track together with the Baden-Württemberg AI Alliance. So this is a group of people working in AI, also supported by the government here. So we ideally also have some outreach to SMEs, to everyone in the region. And I think that would be also good to have some talk about our AI guide there, and also maybe making a short workshop, something like that, to raise the awareness about this AI guide. Just that there's some option also for outreach in there.
Sounds like a
Yeah,
great
we have more
opportunity.
than one ambassador, right?
Yeah,
I'm not
and
just
Andrew Katz,
okay.
and I think there's somebody else in Japan as well.
Cool.
So maybe that's something, if it's based in Germany, myself and Andrew might be able to make it. But it's probably combinations of the people on this call trying to promote it through our own networks.
I will have a first meeting with this other group here in Germany on Thursday. So I directly also ask, so maybe we can also win over some more people to join in earlier, right here in the next meetings from that end. If they would organize, maybe also present a little bit what they are doing, and then maybe also win over some of them also to be ambassadors for the AI guide, and also we can save some travel costs, etc. I don't know. I try everything you can you can think of to make that as successful as possible, and to push our topics of open chain in those events, and win over new people, because I think now I get it more and more in contact with the AI people, and always trying to see, okay, what is their use case? How does that fit? Also with what we are noting down. So I think it's also a journey, right? So we need to learn also what we think it's important, but also what are those practitioners think, what would be important, what they think about it. I think that would also be helpful to get this feedback loop. Yeah. But would super appreciate if Andrew or you, Matthew, could show up and give us also some insights from this working group would be great.
I mean, you know Andrew, don't you,
Yes.
Martha? Do you want to send us a message with the details of the event?
Yeah. So maybe if I don't know who's in Japan next week, so also maybe we can talk with some next week. As it will be my first contact here with this local AI group. So after Thursday, I can tell you more, but maybe then it makes sense that I connect you, right, with this
Sure.
contact
Yeah.
person, so that we have a common online meeting, and to figure out, okay, what could be potential options and synergies, etc., between different activities.
Sounds great. So then I also recommend others, if there's an opportunity to talk, if there's a call for papers at conferences, anytime you're meeting people, even if it's not a formal presentation, that you are able to speak to this guide. And I do believe, I guess, when some companies start endorsing it, that will probably make it easier for people to talk. And then again, if there's more worked examples, to Dave's earlier point, that the story then starts to evolve. Okay, so the other item on the agenda, unless anyone wanted to talk more about this guide, was there? No, okay. Was the idea of this AI questionnaire for procurement purposes. As I highlighted at the start, we want a tool from a certain company, they send us information, we want more questions answered. Can we standardize this across the industry? I guess some people were present at our last meeting, others were not. Would like to hear people's thoughts on whether we think this is a good idea, whether this is something OpenChain should do, whether this working group should do. So I will pause there for some thoughts.
I think with enough industry input and feedback on it, like we did for the prior document, I think this could be a valuable vehicle to champion some harmonization in the industry. But I think we need to be cautious not to make it required across the board, because then it'll shrink down to a very small document. But I think it could be interesting to say, here's an example that you can build off of.
Other people's thoughts?
I mean, I feel like model cards have evolved to sort of fill this need. But I don't know if that, instead of phrasing it as what should you ask, we could pose it as what information should you provide. But that might even change with regulations and etc. So I'm a maybe, as long as we stay out of negotiation tactics and monopoly stuff.
Makes sense to me. I agree.
So I see your point, Mary, about it being very similar to model cards, but I guess some thoughts that I had over the intervening month when somebody mentioned this was, asking the company what their tool is, but then talk about what their training data is, what method they use to train, who owns the data that comes out of it. Do you use that data to train your model? Do we need any specific license to use the output that's generated? Do you comply with security, privacy, data handling, and so on? So I can see a mirror of what we've done in that guide to just capture some questions to send to a supplier.
I see.
I mean, in the absence of that, then we look to what does this group cover next? Anyone have any ideas? do we just spend all of our efforts trying to promote this guide?
I think that's the phase that we're at. I think we're, here to, I think at this point, discuss adoption, right? In fact, stopping work on the specification actually signals, that, we have a version that we're happy with. So whether it's this version or version 1.1, we should probably look for a point to sort of pause that. There will be continued feedback, and maybe we log that as, in a potential change log for consideration. But for the next version. But I think pausing the specification side of things is probably a good milestone.
If that is the case, as I said, in the January meeting, we would do a webinar on this. But what do we want to try and cover in subsequent working group sessions?
We have a little bit of more work to do for the 1.1 updates that we talked about today.
Yeah.
So we should make sure that's on the agenda.
Okay. I've stopped sharing my screen and I can see all the participants' name now. I see Nicola, thank you. You're one of the ambassadors for this group.
Yeah, that is true. Sorry for being late. I couldn't take that much
Not a
participation today, but yeah, had other things for today. But one thing that I wanted to mention is Marcel already said that regarding the upcoming event next week. So I'm not certain whoever is joining there from you guys, but you can count on me for the promotion of this during the event, and we can get some feedback from the community.
Excellent. So then, therefore in January, we can do a webinar on what we've done so far. We're just going to use the slides that Dave, I, and Jimmy presented at the Legal Summit. Unless anyone wants to contribute anything to that, then we can just go ahead with that guide. Open it up for further discussion. And then in February, then we can come back and have a look at this guide and see how we're doing in terms of promotion and a version 1.1 update. Does that seem reasonable to everyone?
Sounds like a great plan.
Well, thank you everyone for all your hard work today, all your hard work this year. I hope you have a great end of your year break and we can reconvene in the new year. And to those who are at the Compliance Summit next week, I'm sorry I'm going to miss it, but I hope you have a good time.
Great. Yeah.
Thank you.
My thanks as well. Thanks, everybody.
Thank
Thanks
you.
everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Have a good one, everyone. Talk to you soon. Bye.
Bye.